All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today for another edition of our Navigating the Coronavirus Economy series. And today's session is one that has been happening here for the last few months. And I think this is just going to be a regular staple to bring together folks who are interested in the what's happening in franchise sales, trends in the economy, what we're seeing, and trying to synthesize all of the data that's out there that's impacting us from a macro perspective and micro, and just hear some rumblings on the ground. So thanks again for being here. My name's Tom DuFore. I'm the CEO of Big Sky Franchise Team. And if you're new to us or aren't as familiar, we help companies to franchise their business. And then we help support our clients in their expansion and growth in expanding and growing and adding franchises into their business. So as we go through this, please feel free, type in questions if you have a question or ask to unmute yourself. We'll open it up at the end. I recognize some of the folks who have tuned in here. So certainly several folks are involved in the franchise community as a franchise consultant, franchise brokers, different folks who are involved in the franchise sales and marketing space. So if you have things that you're seeing or things that you're hearing, certainly would welcome the opportunity to find out from you what that is. So with that being said, I am going to go ahead and share my screen so that we can go ahead and jump right into this here. Okay. Oh, I think, let's see here. I don't know what this is. We're going to phase out of that. There we go. All right, so let's start from a high level on the manufacturing side here. So we're going to take a look at what this looks like. So from a broad macro perspective here, this is showing us what's happening over the course of the last month in the manufacturing segment. And this is a survey that's been done for many, many, many years and gives us an indicator of what's actually happening in the manufacturing space. And I always like to start with manufacturing, some of these broad sectors that really impact us every day that we don't even really recognize are impacting us. And so manufacturing is one of those big ripple effect industries that really hits us. So I like to point out that on this chart here, if you can see this 50 percentile, this is what's referred to as the manufacturing break-even line. So if our number is above that 50th percentile, that means it's growing, it's trending up. Things are growing as an average across all their industries. So as we can see, it's at a 55.4% growth. And we talked about this the last time, but I like to point out, you kind of see this trend here. Now, it was still growing, but the trend was starting to move downward here through 2018, really all of 2019. It bounced up at the first of the year. And of course, when the pandemic hit, dropped down really low, and it popped up again. And so we can see all of these different things that are happening. And it ticked down just a little bit from last month, 0.6 point change there. So fairly nominal, but still something to make a note of to see that we are seeing this growth. So manufacturing, it's growing. That's a good indicator for us as a whole. So let's take a look at the services industry and see what's happening in the services business here. So when we take a look at the services, we see a similar trend that we see happening in manufacturing as well. We see a giant drop, and then it pops back up. We're at 57.8%. It did tick up 0.9 from last month into this month, from August into September. And this index comes out right at the first of the month here in October. So for what happened in September. So it's pretty interesting to see what's happening. So we're seeing this growth trend happen here in the services space. The next thing I want to take a look at here is retail spending. Now, this is out in today's Wall Street Journal. This is what's happening right now. This was published today. Where's the date on it? October 16th. So it was just published this morning. I mean, literally less than 2 hours ago, this was published. And I thought that this was very timely for our conversation here to be talking about what's happening in retail spending. And retail spending is up another almost 2%. It's up 1.9%. In September. It was up 0.6 in August, 1.1 in July, 8.6. You can see these big jumps, but this is showing you what's happening. And certainly we know the ripple effect that retail takes. It has a small percentage. The percentage of our overall economy keeps shrinking a little bit at a time, but the impact is significant. And this includes everything from cars, auto sales, to gasoline and anything retail. Let me see if I can refresh this page. I'm going to fast forward to this video here. Don't worry, I'm not going to try and play this video over the Zoom. Let's see if it gives me this video to play. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. Doesn't look like it's going to be nice with us here. So I'll see. Oh, here it is. It just loaded. Okay, we're just going to fast forward because there's a really nice image here that I wanted to show you. Pause. This is what happens when, there we go. Okay, so this is showing you retail sales trends. If you can kind of see this, I'll see if I can zoom in a little bit here. Hopefully you can see this on your screen. But this is showing back from the 90s, and this is overall retail sales. So you can see that other than kind of this dip here during the Great Recession where retail sales dropped, over the last 30 plus years, it's just continued to go up as a whole. And these colors here, the red are auto sales, this light blue is clothing retailers, green is merchandisers, food and beverages, yellow, and then the blue is just anything else, retail. So you kind of see these trends continuing to go up. And I just make a point of that, even though it's the percentage of retail in terms of the overall economy, that percentage is shrinking, the overall dollar spent is growing. So I think that, that's a really good thing to point out and showcase for you. Now let's jump into retail foot traffic. Now I think it's interesting to see that retail sales is up 2%, but when we take a look at retail traffic has been trending downward. Things had been going pretty well over the last several months. You could see the retail here back in March and April. We've talked through this in previous sessions, but where the retail foot traffic really hit a bottom, and it's kind of come back to within about 20% of pre-pandemic levels. And for some reason, the last few weeks here, let's see, this was really the start of October, you see this decline here. And I don't know what may or may not be causing that trend. I'm really not sure. But just some food for thought for you to take into consideration. Foot traffic seems to be down. I'm not quite sure. So we'll see how that impacts us going forward into November. But certainly for those of us that we know that if you're in the retail business of any kind, fourth quarter is your golden quarter. So you've got October, November, December with the holidays, Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and so on coming up here. So just to give you a quick overview on retail. One other macro thing I wanted to show you here. This was an email I received last night from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And I wanted to showcase this. Let me see if I can zoom a little bit. There we go. Hopefully that's a little bit better. But I just wanted to showcase about consumer and producer prices are on the rise. And the reason that this is significant for us to all be paying attention to, again, this is from a very macro standpoint. And believe me, I am not an economist, so I do not want to pretend as if I am, but I'm trying to help synthesize all of this data for us and bring these different data points together so that when we're talking to people about franchise sales and the economy as a whole, or selling businesses, I see a couple of business brokers on, these are indicators, are the past performance, it's that old adage, past performance tends to be a good indicator of future performance. It's not a guarantee, but it's like, hey, when someone submits a resume is all past performance driven. We're looking at a resume. You don't know how they're going to work at your business or with your company, but it gives you some indication. It tells you something. And so the reason this consumer and producer prices index are on the rise, this is a good thing because it's just telling the economy that prices are still increasing. We saw a big drop, and that's what the Federal Reserve was nervous about here in February, March, and April, was that we may go into some form of a deflationary standpoint or a stagflation. Either one of those are not good indicators for the globe, for our economy or the global economy. It's not a good thing. So seeing prices steadily increase is a good thing for consumer and producer. And one other quick point of note that's down here a little bit here is the wage growth. So real wage growth for an hourly employee or any employee working for a company is actually increasing. So the rate at which wage growth is occurring is far outpacing inflation. So when you talk about real wage growth, you for quick simple math and a simple formula, we just take wage growth minus inflation, and that tells you how much purchasing power the actual employee or person who's getting that wage is it going up or down, or what is it, about the same? What's actually happening? And you can see the gap here. 4.7 minus 1.4 is going to give us what, 3.3% or so. So that's going to give us about a 3.3% real wage growth or purchasing power for that employee. And so that is important because now when people are going out and buying things, they're going to have a few extra dollars in their pocket, which drives future retail sales, which drives future manufacturing. All these things play together. So just for you, as you're thinking about this, as you're selling franchises or being involved or interested in it, and how this impacts things, this means that if someone has a mortgage payment and a car payment and all of these more fixed expenses, their real purchasing power goes up because they will have extra dollars left at the end of the month that they can go out and now go to, I don't know, depending on what state you're in or your comfort level of going out in and around people, but you may do carry out or takeout at your favorite restaurant. And instead of maybe once every couple weeks, maybe you do it once a week now, kind of a deal. And that all spurs and continues to that circular growth and drive. So that's from a macro standpoint. And now, while you're all here, the franchise stuff, right? So let's take a look through some of the franchise data that has recently been released. Much of this has been released yesterday or within the last week or so, but I really like this data, and I think this came out yesterday. I've got to look at the exact date, but this is a really cool chart through Franchise Insights. They just have some really nice data that gives us real-time franchise and small business startup data. So the September Startup Sentiment Index, shows dramatic increase in startups planned 3 months out. So you see we've got what these buyers are thinking about doing. When are they planning to start their business? Okay, so we'll go across the top. The green bar is planning to buy or start a business this month. The blue bar is they're planning to buy in 4 to 6 months. And the purple, or that kind of fuchsia color, is the next 3 months. And so they highlighted in this kind of bright purple color for us to take a look at it. The next 3 months, look at the surge here in the next 3 months in terms of people looking to open. It's really, really fantastic. So people are thinking fourth quarter. They're thinking maybe right at the turn of the new year of getting these businesses up and started. So consumer interest in buying or starting a business is very, very high. And hopefully hopefully, for those of you that are in the space of franchise sales and marketing, you're seeing that. I can tell you from our vantage point and from the clients we're engaged with and the prospects that we're talking to, we have definitely seen an uptick just as a whole. Brand to brand may be a little different, but as a whole, we have definitely seen an increase in activity and an increase in people moving through the franchise sales process. We talk about this every session we go through this, but it's amazing prior to the pandemic how many times someone would say, well, I'm waiting for that promotion, or my husband just got a new job offer and we've got to relocate, or I just got a promotion and she says, I'm not quite ready to make that move. And they put on hold starting that business or buying the franchise. And this now with the pandemic hit, everything's changed, right? So we've got all of these indicators trending up. I think it's interesting that if we look at August for the green bar here, where 23.4% of the people interested in starting a business, that popped back down, that dropped pretty heavily. There was about a 10% drop in people saying, I want to start right now. And maybe that dropped. Maybe it dropped because maybe the 10% of those, or 10 points, or roughly a third, or almost half of this number, 40% of it, decided to start that business. Hopefully they did. Maybe they pulled themselves out of the statistic. I don't know. But it's just interesting. You see the green bar was rising and then it dropped in September. And the real gain here was the 3 months out. So I think that's critical. So, how can you use this data, right? What can you be doing if you're in the fields of selling or marketing franchises? Well, I think it's the pre-sale of the New Year's resolution. Right now is the pre-sale. We're pre-selling. We're saying, hey, get 2021 started on the right foot. Let's get 2020 behind us. I've already heard people starting to say that, talking about moving. Hey, get 2020 in your rearview mirror today. We're in the fourth quarter. The year's almost over. Let's move. Let's get 2021 in our field of vision and focus in on that. So I think that this is a really telling chart. I think it's really neat. And I mean, over 40% of people that are interested in opening or buying a business are looking to do that in the next 3 months. So that's a telling sign. And what we're not seeing here is this blue bar where they're thinking that 4 to 6 months. So that means that people are not drastically delaying their decision. They're not delaying that decision. So to me, that's a good thing for anyone that's actively selling businesses right now. So they're not delaying it. Recognize that it may be a 3-month cycle. So how can you change that? Well, you may want to change some of your marketing efforts today to start placating to maybe a 45 to 90-day sales cycle to get them in the mindset to say, and we know in franchise sales, it's very rarely someone ever buy in less than 30 days. It's very rare. But getting them in that mindset to say, hey, we know this is a process, and get a 6-week or a 9-week or 12-week sales cycle for you to make sure you're walking the candidates through with different steps. Step 1 is, 2 weeks, and step 2 is another 2 weeks, step 3, step 4. And at the end of step 4, you sign the paperwork and you get things moving. So just some food for thought there. All right. This was an interesting statistic that came out. I thought was really cool from Franchise Insights again. But this is talking about how many concepts a potential franchise buyer or a potential business buyer is exploring. How many are they actually considering? Now, I think as a franchise broker, you've got your feet on the street. So for all of our franchise brokers and consultants on the line, this is probably not terribly new information. You're probably feeling this and seeing this every day and every week in your own business. But just some food for thought here to walk through this data is we look at the number of concepts contacted by potential buyers. The blue bar is where they reached out to just a single concept, and the green bar is where they reached out to 1 or 2 concepts. So you see the overwhelming majority, basically almost 2/3 of all buyers are exploring more than one opportunity. And so I think that we all know you're competing. Their chances are they're going to be looking at something, but this just validates it, that the likely probability is, even if they don't tell you, if the candidate does not tell you that they are looking at another business, there's a good chance that they are, or they're talking to someone else in the wings. This is probably a likely suspicion that you have as a sales professional or marketing professional, but this is just a reinforcement of that, and just something for you to take note of to try to pull it out. And in my experience, I found that most candidates are not considering two brands in the same industry. So, for example, if someone's considering a muffler shop, chances are they're not looking at more than one muffler shop. They might be looking at a muffler shop and a staffing industry, a staffing business. I don't know, picking two very different business models. But I've just found that they're usually very different from one another. So, just some things for you to take a look at here. All right, next chart. So I think this is a pretty neat one. So this is the franchise development contact attempt rates. All right, so this is basically how many calls. I'll try to zoom in here so we can see this a little better. There, that's a little better. So how many times are leads getting called, or how many? So this is saying how many concepts they're asking. These questions are being asked to the prospective buyers. How many concepts that you inquired to, how many of them actually called you back or contacted you back? And so the green bar says all of the brands I reached out to contacted me back. So it's kind of these extreme, there's no middle. So it's all of them called me back. And you can kind of see this drop off here. Look at, we've got January, February, March was really high follow up. And then it started dropping April, May. Look at the drop in June. This may be, you think about it from a franchise sales perspective, how many brands may have been out there, just as an example, holding on to some of their, maybe they were hit by the pandemic, said, hey, we've got to keep our sales and marketing going. And then boom, this may have been a time period where staff may have been eliminated, unfortunately, or downsized because maybe revenue was impacted. And you see it drop from over 65% in the month of March down to 45% in the month of June. Really big fallout rate. It popped up again here in September, which is great, back to where we were in January, the exact same number we were in January. But just something to be taken into consideration as you're calling through some of your leads, how many folks are not being contacted still. And then that's all of them. And then none of them is the blue. So if we look at this blue line, in the month of September, 19% of all prospective business buyers said that they never got a call back from any potential suitor that they were seeking. So that means basically, if we're using rough numbers, 1 out of every 5 leads had 0 follow-up of any kind. And it seems crazy, but that's the kind of stuff that just happens. And how sometimes a lead slips through the crack, a broken sales cycle, leads not getting plugged into some kind of a CRM system or data management tool. And I think as someone in the business, this is a reminder to know that regardless of the business you're selling or the businesses or franchises that you're selling, so much of it still falls back onto the follow-up. You can't tell your story if you don't get in touch with the person or you don't follow up with the people that have inquired. So just some food for thought there. And then if we add these two together, it's roughly 20 plus 55. That's 75% between these two numbers. So then we can take the data one step further and say, okay, well, that means that about 25% of the leads are only or 25% of the buyers are only contacted by some of the companies that they reached out to. So again, it's just an interesting thing for you to take into consideration. And that was the last one. I thought I had one more up. So I will stop sharing my screen here, see if we can open this up for some conversation, comments, thoughts. We've got some, I can tell from our audience, I know we have some very seasoned professionals here. So any questions, comments from the audience, go ahead and unmute yourself here. You can also type in the chat box too, if that's easier.
Tom.
Yes.
Rich Greer, Houston, Texas. Go
Hey,
Texans.
Rich. All right.
Yeah, we won our first game last week. I'm really struck by by your statistics about follow up. My wife has her master's in statistics, so she drives into my school all the time that there are lies and there are damned lies and there are statistics, right?
Mm-hmm.
So statistics are just that. You know way you want to look at them.
Yep.
But I'm wondering if, okay, and I'm kind of like to get your thoughts on this. The slides before that, you had where you're looking at one or two concepts or something like that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then how often were you contacted? And we don't have that correlation of if you're looking at multiple franchises, perhaps that might skew it, or if you're looking at one. So that's
Right.
one of, that's
Very
not a
true.
question. I'm just throwing this out as a public thought that, we just don't know if there is a correlation. But
Correct.
but my thought was also, I was kind of doing the same thing you were. I was looking at that and saying, oh my God, 20% of the people are not even, being contacted, or the leads are not being contacted. If you're looking at multiple, say you're looking at 5 brands, that means one brand didn't bother to call you. And I'm a broker. I eat what I kill. So for me to not call someone would be a waste of money. I would consider that to be like dumping a couple $100 outside my window.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that most brokers would not let something like that slip. And so I guess I'm wondering, do you think it might be? And I hope I don't mean to offend anybody who's a franchise development director on this call. Please, I highly respect what you guys do. But I know that y'all look at us sometimes saying that we're a little on the lazy side, and I agree. There's a lot of us that are. No conflict with that at all. But I wonder if it's also true that hey, look, I'm getting paid a salary. Yeah, I get paid a little bonus if I close one. Here comes a lead at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Bah, I'll do that tomorrow. But tomorrow something else happens. Well, me, I'm calling that 5 o'clock in the evening. Because again, I don't have a salary. I have to close as many as I can. I'm wondering if there's some sort of if there's been any kind of papers or anything written on that, or if you can talk about it at all, or maybe the answer is no idea.
Yeah, no, great question. And I think that there have been some industry reports that try to help showcase the difference between broker leads. I know Fran Connect put out a great report, and a franchise development report, and then the annual franchise development report from Franchise Update Media, and a few other sources that have been doing a nice job on releasing some of that data. The challenge with most of it for us today is most of it's from 2019. It's 2019 data. And we're looking at saying, well, 2019, the world is vastly different. So that's why I wanted to kind of pull some of these data points that we're talking about right as close to right now as we can. Last quarter, last month, recently, I would say, for example, I tend to agree with you there, Rich, that certainly there are larger brands with franchise directors, and there may be franchisees that aren't followed up with. And remember, this information comes from the perspective of the buyer. So very often a buyer may submit something, and you think about a more mature brand, that gets an application, well, they're going to find out early on. They're going to screen them hard to say, well, what's your net worth? How much cash do you have? And if those benchmarks aren't met, the mature brand's definitely not going to bother calling them back. Maybe a startup or an emerging brand might be willing to consider to say, hey, maybe you can find a partner or an investor or someone where they take that extra step. And very often, if you're looking to buy a large brand, they very well might just say, you know, sorry, we only sell 3-unit deals. We don't do individual units anymore, and never call that person. They just don't call them back, because why would they waste their time on it? So and of course, perception of the buyer. There's a good chance that buyer may have been emailed and phone called 2 or 3 times, or emailed a handful of times. And Rich, I know you've had that happen, where that buyer says, well, no one ever called me. And you check your call log, and you know full well and good that this person, I have the emails, I have the voicemails, I have the text messages. It shows me right here that you were contacted, and they said, well, I never, and you know, so again, it's the perspective of the buyer. So I don't want to say I discount that, but I take it into consideration from that. Thank you. Yeah, Jasmine, thank you very much for tuning in. I know you had to drop off there. Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, Karen?
I think Jasmine had something to say.
That was very good information. I do have one question.
Yeah.
Do you have any information about the marketing channels that franchisors are using to reach into or prospective buyers?
We do. Yeah. Yeah. There are some reports. When we connect, are we connecting next week sometime?
Next
I think.
week, yes.
Yeah. Let's talk through some of those. I can go over some of that with you for sure.
Thank you.
Sure. Yes.
I love this statistic, and I took a couple screenshots, but I've also been in a huge number over the past like 3 or 4 years of marketing webinars and seminars, and this has been a theme. This is not a new and only this industry. This is almost all industries, and I always regard it as a quick kick in the derriere to say, hey, you're maybe neglecting somebody. It's 5 o'clock, make that phone call, do what Rich would do. And so I think it's a matter of human nature and the sales laziness that sometimes occurs, not always, but and I think it's just something that we have to take in and say, I'm going to make my calls.
Sure. Yeah. No, you're spot on. And look, as sales and marketing professionals, we've all been in that spot where, you know, when the lead comes in, and there's a difference between a lead and an actual buyer, someone who's going to buy now or in the next 30 days. And you can tell with this difference in the sense of urgency from that candidate. And so when those come in, you know, those the low hanging fruit that falls in your lap and it's just a sale, those are easy. So you want more easy, you know, and, you know, the reality is most leads, they're going to enter into the pipeline, you know, basically since the internet became mainstream, say the late 90s into the early 2000s, the sales pipeline for every business changed, because now you can just search online, late night, you know, web surfing, thinking about this and that. You click and enter a form and you forget you did it 2 days later, but now you're in a sales cycle, and that candidate very well may be a buyer, but they're 12 months out. They're just kind of really, 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 really early into that sales cycle. And just remembering that as we go through it. And for franchise sales, business sales, I mean, this is a long sales cycle. This is not a $20, you know, infomercial instant product that you get your credit card out and do it. I mean, this is, as we all know, for most, especially first-time business owners, this is a life-changing, life-altering decision. And then you have the second buyer that comes in that is maybe an entrepreneur of some kind, and now they're looking at a business as an investment where they're going to hire staff and do other things, and that's a different buyer. And that person takes some time versus the multi-unit operator that already has 10 or 20 of this or that, and now they're just looking to add into their portfolio that they already have. And now it becomes a true financial thing that they're looking at and say, okay, when do I see my return? And they may look to move and purchase very rapidly because there's less hand-holding needed. They already understand what it takes to run a business. So, look, there's a great service to what you're providing, Karen, Rich, Don, and everyone else who's on that's in this space of franchise marketing or sales or business. It's the same thing we tell our clients when they come through this process. This is a transformational process. They are transforming from an employee to an entrepreneur, and it's a mindset transformation. And as the salespeople and marketing people involved, we're guiding them through that. And so it's just a nice reminder, even for myself and our team, to when we do these things and preparing for it, that it's a reminder, because it's easy to fall out of that as we're going through this to get our we start quantifying everything. How many leads did I get, and how many dials came in, and how many appointments were set, and how many follow-ups did I miss, or how many this did I make, and all of that. And there is, taking a breath and realizing there is that, that's half the battle. And it's also half, it is likability too. And expressing some empathy and understanding to the people that you're working with. So, I appreciate all of those comments. Any other questions for us here or comments from the group?
Yeah, this is Don in the Chicago area. Is there any recent data on the types of franchises that are being contacted? I assume food has gone down, just because so many restaurants have taken a big hit. But is there anything that's trending up with all this number of leads that you're showing?
Let me pull this up and show you. This is at this point about a month old. Because I think we showcased this at our last session, but this is again from Franchise Insights. I just really like the data they aggregate together. But this just shows interest, how growth in different business segments have changed. So growth in franchise interest. So financial services surged huge. I mean, that's a statistical anomaly. I don't know. We may need to ask Rich's wife how to interpret that for us. She'd probably give us a great answer, but there's an outlier there that just something doesn't seem to measure up. Even looking at previous reports, it's a significant outlier. And then we have health and fitness, personal care, home services, real estate, automotive, all of these segments. These were the highest gainers for that month. And then this is the change in inquiries. So these correlate to one another here. Certainly you see the percentage change, but the percentage of total inquiries that came in for each of these to showcase that. So, I always think this is interesting. This was July to August, and you see health and fitness, almost a 15% jump. Now it did drop a little, but a 15% increase is significant. That means people are thinking post-pandemic and things opening up again. That's saying, hey, because when you're doing health and fitness, you're usually around other people. You're in a space. You're opening a gym, a studio, or something, and that's the second highest gain in interest. That's interesting. Personal care, you would probably expect that. Some kind of personal care, maybe senior care, something like that. Given home services makes sense. We've seen a lot of anything on the exterior of a home has just been booming. And, fortunately, those businesses were not shut down. So they were able to keep working, and people are getting their houses painted and their roofs done and windows replaced and things like that. Real estate. And, for me, I found interesting on this list was automotive. That one really, because it's such a mature stable industry, not only just from a consumer standpoint, but from a franchise standpoint too. I mean, you don't get too many peaks and valleys for the automotive business. It's pretty kind of steady Eddie. So to see a surge in automotive means that people are maybe thinking, what's going to be around for a while? You know, I kind of look at each of these and say, well, people are thinking about, well, what's going to happen if there's another pandemic type of thing, or what's something people have to have? Well, financial services, people are going to want to be healthy, personal care, home services are going to have to get done. People are real estate, right? Real estate is going to be bought and sold. Automotive, people's cars and vehicles have to get maintained or serviced, and things have to happen to it. So you kind of see a common theme orienting around those. And certainly it's not an indication that says, well, if you own a restaurant or something, that it's not popular. It's just you kind of see those shifts in some of the trends here. So does that help answer that there, Don?
Yeah, the health and fitness is a little surprising, but the others make sense.
Yeah. Yep.
Because the health clubs around here, some have reopened, but they're limiting the number of people and still trying to figure out how to exercise with a mask on. Those types of things. So, but down the road, yeah, and a lot of people have been getting themselves in better shape during the pandemic. So, it does make sense.
Great. Well, thank you all for tuning in. Any other questions before we wrap up here today?
Thank you, Tom. That was very interesting, very informational.
Great. Thank you. Thank you all for joining. I appreciate it. We will rebroadcast this as a replay. So if you want to share this with someone on your team or someone else that you may find that may see value in it, we'll send that. We should get that out to you here next week. So thank you so much for tuning in. Really appreciate it. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good weekend.
Okay. Bye-bye.